Well, hello, and welcome to Election Day. We made it. Can you believe it? It is finally here. The day is here, and I am feeling very good about what I think the outcome will be tonight. But we got to finish strong right through the finish line. I'll see you tonight at about 7 p.m. Look for the email for the exact time. If you're a subscriber, you'll get it. If you're not, sign up now. Patreon.com/Pete Dominic. Thank you to Clay Welsh, who just signed up for a subscription. Saw it come in last night, made my night. Very excited. Anytime someone new signs up to be a paid subscriber to support this show, which you can hear each and every weekday, where we're talking to the best, smartest guests that you can find in all of the land. I work really hard at finding these folks, preparing great conversations, editing them, and getting them up for you, which is exactly what I did today. Here on Election Day, I've got Maura, Quint, Dr. Jason Johnson, and a hilarious, thought-provoking conversation with my dad, Chizzle D. All of those are coming up starting at 30 minutes. But first, I've got your headlines and a whole bunch of clips from yesterday, which is what I do at the beginning of each and every show. Nobody does a better, more comprehensive news recap than I do. I do it the way that I always wanted to hear it. Headlines, not a lot of commentary around them, and the clips, the issues that are most impactful to you, your community, your country, and your planet. That's how I pick them. Let's do it, shall we? Here on Election Day. I'm reading all kinds of analysis about when we will know and how we'll get clues to when we'll have a winner. Those clues could come out early, and it might last days or weeks, as you know. More than 78 million people have already voted as we head into today. Polls suggest the two candidates who obviously could not be any more different. Donald Trump has been running for president for like 10 years, and she's been running for like 16 weeks. He's a fascist, and she's a classic candidate, a qualified candidate, someone that many of us really like and are rooting for. But yet it could take days or even longer to know who wins. So the first thing we'll figure out is just how close it's shaping up to be. The first battleground state where polls close is Georgia at 7 p.m. East, followed by North Carolina at 7:30 East. A majority of voters cast ballots early in both states. Those results are expected to be reported early in the night. The vast majority of ballots in both states are likely to be tallied and reported by midnight. So that'll give us an early sense of whether the night is shaping up to be a battle that's going to be really close or something a lot more decisive. If Kamala Harris opens up a lead in either or both states, North Carolina and Georgia, she'll have multiple paths to the 270 electoral votes that our stupid system needs to win. But the disgraced former president's chances of victories is going to be like very narrow if that's the case. If he has a lead in either of those states, it could come down to the returns from the three so-called blue wall states of Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. Now, in Pennsylvania, where both campaigns view it as a must-win state and have spent a tremendous amount of time, polls close there at 8 p.m. East, but because election workers aren't allowed to start processing mail ballots until Election Day, today, counting is expected to stretch past Tuesday night. In Michigan, where polls close at 9 p.m., only about half of ballots were counted by midnight in 2020 and 2022, although recent reforms could speed things up. And in Wisconsin, where polls close at 9 p.m. East, counting could stretch late into the night. The fascist best path to the presidency has long been seen as victories in Pennsylvania, Georgia, and North Carolina. And her best path is seen through Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. So if the picture is in any way muddled, we could find ourselves looking west for answers, and that could mean a long wait. So we're talking about Arizona and Nevada that close at 9 p.m. and 10 p.m. Eastern. Both states rely heavily on mail-in ballots, and the counting could stretch for days. In recent elections, all the blue wall states have typically voted the same way, but it's not clear if that's going to hold this year. That's a quick summary of what we expect tonight. But dumb Joe Rogan came out and endorsed Donald Trump last night. Will that be a game changer? Nah, I don't think it matters at all. But still, just wanted to make sure that everybody knew that that was the case late last night. One of the most famous people in the country, one of the most enormously popular podcasts in the country, endorsed the former president in a post on social media. And now let's just get to some other headlines, and then we'll come back to the election. But yesterday in Oklahoma, more severe weather. After a weekend of destruction caused heavy rainfall and a string of tornadoes, at least 11 people were injured. Around 100 homes were damaged as a result of weekend severe weather. Left in the wake of the tornadoes was damage to several structures, downed power lines, traffic lights, and trees. And so that's terrible, but shouldn't affect the election. And it's terrible for me to draw that conclusion, but that's the most important thing right now because, well, obviously. Israeli bombardment damaged an already crippled major hospital in northern Gaza Strip on Monday, injuring medical staff and patients, local officials said, a week after Israeli forces withdrew from the complex and detained dozens of people. Let's come back home. The Supreme Court yesterday agreed to decide a thorny legal dispute from Louisiana involving the state's effort to draw a congressional district map while navigating claims it unlawfully considered race. The case has no immediate impact on this year's elections in the state, which is using a map that includes 2 majority black districts out of 6. The unrest in Spain continues, where protesters hurled mud at Spain's king, queen, and prime minister as they visited the town ravaged by deadly floods, with some going as far as calling them murderers. The king and prime minister were visiting on Sunday, where a creek overflowed with such might last week that it swept away cars, trapped residents, and coated streets. In Iran, there was quite a protest. Iranian authorities have detained a young woman who was seen walking around a university in Tehran in her underwear, according to video shared on social media and state news agencies, and what activists say was a protest against enforcement of the country's strict dress code. And days before a neck-and-neck presidential race, gas prices, one of the most salient data points consumers use to gauge inflation, are tumbling in key swing states. Last night, I saw that it was like under $3 in New Jersey, $2.85, I think I saw. And one more investigation as President Biden prepares to retire. As Donald Trump and his allies continue to try to stem the fallout from comedian Tony Hinchcliffe calling Puerto Rico a floating island of garbage, Republican House leaders are seeking to keep President Joe Biden's verbal gaffe about the incident in the spotlight in the final days of the election. In Ohio, a former police officer was found guilty of murder in the 2020 shooting of Andre Hill, a black man. Backlash after his death spurred police reform. That's a second day in a row that I've read that kind of headline, and that is good news. The monkeypox epidemic in Africa is growing, raising fears of another outbreak in the U.S., but vulnerable Americans are going without the vaccine, which is no longer free. I don't like that at all. In California, strong winds have braced residents for more wildfires, and states and cities across the country are preparing for potential election-related violence, I guess I should say. In Washington, the governor announced the activation of some members of the National Guard to be on standby status in case they are asked to help local law enforcement. Across the river in Portland, Oregon, they were increasing staffing on Election Day and the days following as a precaution. In Nevada, the governor there said 60 National Guard members would be activated on standby status and stationed in Las Vegas and Carson City. In Washington, D.C., Metropolitan Police Chief said the police will stand up a full activation, meaning all police would be working 12-hour shifts, and depending on what happens, maybe a little longer to ensure that they have enough officers on the street in every corner of the city. And despite the lack of widespread violence so far, many people across the country are concerned about the potential. And one new poll released yesterday, 72% of likely voters said they were concerned about violence as a result of the election. So, yeah, if I were to answer that poll, I'd say I'm concerned. But I still don't think it's likely, and I'm never wrong about things, right, folks? And finally, you all probably know that Quincy Jones died at age 91, a colossus of American music for more than half a century, left a profound influence on nearly every genre he touched. Jazz, funk, soundtrack, syrupy R&B, and chart-topping pop created conditions for other black musicians to flow between styles, outlets, and markets. He began his career as a jazz trumpeter and was later in great demand as an arranger, a composer, and a record producer. And you know that I didn't come up with that, reading that from the New York Times obituary of Quincy Jones. All right, those are the headlines that I've got for you. Now back to today's election, which everybody has their mind on or not. You're looking away from it and trying to be distracted by it. And no one could be blamed for either reaction. I'm just very glad to have you here listening to me and supporting my work, and I'll be here for you and supporting yours however I can today, tomorrow, and the days ahead as our community continues to grow and depend on each other, connect with each other, and support each other. All right. Well, that's the message. I think I'm going to keep that. That was pretty good. And now it's time to get to the audio that I brought for you. I try to grab a plethora, a potpourri of clips each and every day that give you some insight on what was said by important, thoughtful thought leaders the day before, the last 24 hours. And let's start with the great John Oliver on Last Week Tonight. I wasn't there this past weekend, but he was, and he did a great show. And I think I'm going to keep this whole 6 minutes in because it went viral. This is John Oliver making the case that no matter how you feel about the horrific situation in Gaza, you got to vote for Kamala Harris.
I've been moved by some Muslim and Arab voices who've also wrestled hard with this question and arrived at the conclusion, despite their pain, to vote for Harris. In Arizona, a coalition of community leaders issued a letter in which they explained their decision to support her, saying a Trump win would be an extreme danger to Muslims in our country, all immigrants, and the American pro-Palestine movement. And they're not alone in feeling that way. Ruha Roman is the first Muslim woman elected to the Georgia State House. You may remember she's one of several Palestinians who the uncommitted movement put forward to address this year's DNC, only to be rejected by the party, meaning the convention featured no Palestinian speakers. She actually released this TikTok a few weeks ago, partly in response to people telling her she should abandon the Democratic Party because both parties are basically the same. It's honestly worth watching the whole thing, but in it she talks about her anger at what happened, but also about the DNC delegates who stood up for her and those that she sees as movable on this issue. And this is where she lands.
If I know that one party, there is only one viable party on the trajectory that I want them on, why would I leave that behind? There are people who are using my pain to virtue signal and convince you that the threats that we are facing are not actually that big of a deal. My philosophy is that if I can prevent the death of even a single person, I will make the decisions to do that. Period, end of story. I do not believe in the fact that just because things are bad, that it's okay to let them get worse.
It's a compelling argument. And if you're thinking the Biden administration's been so bad on this issue, how could Trump possibly be worse? He's told us. He's told Netanyahu to do what you have to do in Gaza, arguing we should let Israel finish the job, while people in Trump's orbit, including his former ambassador to Israel, have been pushing to let it annex the West Bank. Meanwhile, Trump's also threatened to crush pro-Palestinian protests here in the US and to deport demonstrators. So I know it is hard to imagine things getting worse on this, but to be fair, Trump has always been one to roll up his sleeves, throw on a very unflattering vest, and dig us into a new layer of hell. That is not AI, by the way. That is a real photo, and it may be the worst photo of any human being ever taken. And it's worth factoring in that the damage of a second Trump term would last far beyond the next 4 years and encumber any potential progressive president in the future. 2 of the current justices are at retirement age. And because one of them rudely didn't take my very generous bus offer earlier this year, Trump could replace them with younger versions. At that point, he'd have appointed 5 members of the court and cemented a majority that will likely last for the rest of my life, which admittedly may not actually be that long if Measles McGee here is allowed to let everything get out of control. Look, I know this isn't inspiring to hear, but politics isn't always inspiring. It's transactional. It rarely matches our greatest hopes and dreams. I'll be honest, I really didn't want the first vote I cast as an American citizen to be for Joe fucking Biden, but here we are. Here is how I look at it. The struggle for justice isn't just about what happens on election day. It's a fight waged constantly, day in, day out, in protests, on the street, meetings with legislators, and in the 1,000 small actions that cumulatively move the government forward an inch at a time. Abbas Alawiya, a co-founder of the Uncommitted movement, has urged Democrat voters to pair their votes, their support for Vice President Harris, with a public commitment to pressure her to stop sending weapons should she become president. As for Ruha Roman, she voted for Harris in Georgia, another critical swing state, while doing a vote swap with someone in a blue state who cast a protest vote on her behalf. And she explained her Harris vote by saying, "My vote is a promise that I and those who stand with me will not stop demanding the end of mass slaughter and violence everywhere." And that is the point. Elections alone aren't sufficient for large-scale change, but they're absolutely necessary for it to ever happen. because it's the day when you essentially get to choose who you'd prefer to be pushing for the next 4 years and where you'll be pushing them from. Look, I love this country. I'm an immigrant. I chose to be here. In the words of the late Lee Greenwood, I'm proud to be an American. And I'd argue there is nothing more American than having a healthy adversarial relationship with those in power, even if you voted for them. And while I know this hasn't been a very uplifting speech, if it helps at all, there's one final thing I'm going to be genuinely excited for on Tuesday, and that is, if Donald Trump loses this election, he's basically finished. I know he will put us through hell. He will put us through hell before he left the stage, but when the dust settled, he'd have lost 2 elections in a row, and we would be campaigning as an 82-year-old next time. I think he'd be done. And doesn't that sound great? And I know the problems that he's a symptom of would of course remain, but we wouldn't have to deal with him anymore. Wouldn't it be great to live in a world where he's no longer an active threat, just an annoyance, where this photo could just be funny, rather than having geopolitical implications, where he can yell about ice cream machines and complain about windmills, and we all have the option of just not giving a shit about any of it at all. I want so badly to live in that world, and I hope everyone does everything in their power in the next 48 hours to make that world possible. That's our show. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next week.
All right, there you go. There's John Oliver for 6 minutes. How did you like that, by the way? Was that too long of a clip? Is that okay? Did you forget where you were at here with me on Stand Up? Because you might do it again, because I've got another longer one. And this is just an experiment. Would love to have your feedback. But this is Michael Moore talking to Ayman Mohyeldin on MSNBC. He predicts that Kamala Harris will win. This guy, whether you like him or not, he has been accurate in his predictions. I thought he had some thoughtful things to say, and I want to play the complete 4 minutes of his blabbering because I thought it was interesting and that you would want to hear it all. So here it is.
You know, we're almost 48 hours out from perhaps seeing our first results, but do you stand behind that today?
Oh, even more so. I just keep wondering the gift that the Trump campaign keeps giving us. I don't think they realize, I don't think they really are in touch with where the majority of Americans are at. The majority of Americans do not want this divisiveness. They don't want a threat of violence. We are okay to disagree with each other, but that's where it ends. We go to vote. Who wins, wins. Half the time I've been very happy with who's won, and the other half of the time I haven't been. And we move on with our lives. The fact that the way that what you just played here, I hadn't heard Trump utter those words. I'd heard somebody say that he said them, but to hear him say that about they can shoot through the media, the assassins, go ahead and fire. And all those other things you just played, it's like they really believe that the average normal American wants to hear that. They actually believe that we don't like immigrants. We are immigrants. We are all the children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren of immigrants, unless you are African American or unless you're amongst the first peoples that were here. We are all the product of immigrants, and we love our grandparents and our great-grandparents and the people that got us here to this great country. And to talk about immigrants in this vicious, vile way, where and you think of all the things that we have and we've given the world, and the anger and hatred toward Muslims and Arabs. Steve Jobs. I mean, this never gets discussed. Maybe I'm just a trivia nerd, but he's born of Muslim parents. His parents were Arab, and they put him up for adoption. They had to put him up for adoption, and was adopted by the Jobs family. Yeah. But I wouldn't be talking to you maybe on this device right now in this way without this offspring of a Muslim or an Arab. And I think most Americans, we get down on our knees and thank God that we are the children of immigrants, that we built this country with immigrants. And the fact that we have somewhere, depending on what numbers you want to believe in, somewhere between 9 million and 11 million jobs right now that we do not have enough people to fill. We have upwards to 11 million unfilled jobs, and as we are told, we have maybe 11 million immigrants who aren't here legally. Geez, doesn't that just, if you have a heart, if you have love in you, if you're proud of this country that was built by immigrants, doesn't somewhere in your head go, geez, we need 11 million jobs filled. We have 11 million people that need citizenship. Why don't we go there? Well, I do, and I think a lot of people are like me, and I think that they are going to be very surprised. I'm talking about the Trump people and the MAGA nation by what's going to happen on Tuesday. Not only do I feel, to answer your question 10 minutes later, that I feel the same way that I felt a few weeks ago that Trump is toast. Absolutely. I feel it more. Now, I know I don't want to say it too loudly because our work isn't done.
Right.
We all have doors to knock on tomorrow. We all have to make sure we get people to vote. I've asked everybody to think of 3 people that maybe they know at work or school or whatever that aren't going to vote, to get them to the polls, drive them to the polls, take them to lunch afterwards, have a party after work, after you've taken the office to go vote. We have work to do in these 48 hours. But having said that, I'm very optimistic and hopeful, and frankly, and I know people watching this, Mike, how can you say that?
Yeah.
You know, we have all these crazy people and all the Trumpsters and MAGA Nation. And what I say to them is, honestly, I have a lot of personal, deep faith in my fellow Americans.
Yeah, and it's definitely
they're going to do the right thing.
It's a very important sentiment. I think a lot of people are definitely counting.
Yeah, very important sentiment indeed. There you go. Michael Moore on MSNBC. What'd you think of those 2 long clips? Because I've got one more. I think this is about 3.5 minutes. This is Republican strategist. Used to join me on the old show quite a bit. He is not today's Republican, that's for sure. He was never really that extremely conservative. But his name is Mark McKinnon. He's on that show, The Circus, and he is quite a political strategist, well-known, very well plugged in. He was on CNN with Casey Hunt and had this to say.
You spent some time in Pennsylvania in the last couple of days, and you were particularly talking to Puerto Rican voters there. What'd you pick up on the ground?
Yeah, I'm here on the ground in Philly and have been here for most of the week and will be through the election committee. Listen, I think you had some really unique insights last week when we were talking about the garbage thing in Puerto Rico. And it really got my attention. So we looked into it a little bit more and went to an AOC rally yesterday. And I want to tell you, you were right. First of all, every Puerto Rican in Pennsylvania has heard about the garbage comment. They all know about it. 2, they're all pissed about it. I mean, again, you were right. I mean, there's this real pride thing in Puerto Rico, and there's like nothing more that Trump could have done to offend Puerto Ricans than to describe their country as garbage. And 3, I'll tell you that we talked to a Trump voter, a previous Trump voter who is now voting for Harris, in addition to all the other voters that were there who were Harris voters. They're just on fire. So the Riveras are on fire, Casey, out here, I'll just tell you. And I have one other insight I want to mention about the Seltzer poll that I think is interesting.
Yeah, sure.
I think that there is a huge – I think a big story is going to be the granny gap. I mean, the thing that caught my attention in that poll, and you talked about it a little bit earlier, was the numbers, the polling with women over 65. So Harris is winning that number by 35 points. And just to put that in context, when Trump won in 2016, he won women over 65 by 9. When Biden won in 2020, he won them by 13. So she's winning by 22 more points than Biden won in 2020. So, I mean, that is a huge number. And again, let's say Seltzer's half wrong, and she's got a great record. I know her too. And I think her the way she looks forward and not backwards is a really unique way of looking at polling that doesn't model after 2020. And I've been saying all along this is going to be nothing like 2020. So look at the granny gap. I got a feeling this is going to be substantial.
You heard it here first. The granny gap. It's great. You know, it'll fit on the banner, right? There you go. It's honestly fascinating. First of all, fascinating about we talked to on the show Eddie Moran, who's the mayor of Reading, Pennsylvania. He's Puerto Rican. It's a majority Latino city, and he reflected what you're saying, which is that there were a lot of people who were like, maybe they weren't even paying attention to the election. Maybe they were kind of interested in Trump, But then this crossed their phones, and they got angry about it, and all of a sudden there are more Puerto Ricans who are coming off the couch, which I think sounds like you picked that up, too, which is really interesting. But can we spend another...
100%, Casey.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, the other thing that I didn't realize that really surprised me, 7% of voters in Pennsylvania are Puerto Rican. I mean, in a race that could be decided by a margin of 1 or 2%, if you have 7% of a population who are all on fire because of this issue, again, that could change the outcome of this election just among Puerto Ricans in Pennsylvania, which I think is incredible.
Yeah, no, it's certainly been a subject of text messages among the Puerto Rican members of my family, which is, I think, kind of part of what what sparked this for me.
Well,
Mark,
you nailed it a week ago. You nailed it a week ago. You had it right.
You are too kind.
All right, there you go. Casey Hunt with Mark McKinnon talking about the Granny Gap and specifically in Pennsylvania. Now let's go to CNN's John King, who sat down with a popular Latino radio host in Pennsylvania, and I thought this was pretty interesting as well.
Anything different from the last time we were here?
A lot.
Saros is now voting Harris, and he says the racist insults at the weekend Trump event exploded on social media, triggered listener calls, texts, emails.
That alone flipped a lot of people that were going to go for Trump now saying, hey, maybe I'm not too sure. And maybe I'm going, with Harris. The rhetoric, whether directly from, the candidate or not, it's kind of scary, especially, for Latinos here in Vegas, specifically, my Mexican people.
He says, he doesn't know who allowed those speakers to speak at his rally.
Oh, that's BS.
That's BS.
That's BS.
All right, there you go. Well, I thought that was interesting as well. Another piece of evidence. And now here's a good one from a former labor union member who was a Trump guy and then changed, apparently. Well, who knows if that's true, but this is just a quick clip.
Having more so labor-friendly people in the NLRB is a huge thing. Yeah. And I've seen some things swinging in a positive way. We just want to keep it going that way.
And you feel like the Walz-Harris administration will do that?
I'm hoping so.
And so when you go to cast your vote, how are you going to vote?
I'm going to vote for Harris and Walz.
Well, there you go. Some biased clips by me. I'm making it seem like she's going to win. I am doing that because I truly believe it, and I am optimistic that she will. But obviously, I believe that there's a chance that she won't, that he could win, or that it's going to be a lot closer than I think. But those are the clips that I've got for you that show my bias, and I just want to point it out editorially. I'm not playing right-wingers and Fox News people and others who are predicting a Trump win. Those, I think, were some good clips, some data points, and I wanted to share them with you. And now I just want to get to some comedy, and then we'll get to my conversations with Maura, Dr. Jason Johnson, and my dad, which I think you will really like. But here is Jimmy Kimmel during his last monologue before Election Day.
Election night eve. Oh, I hope everyone enjoyed their extra hour of night terrors last night. We set the clocks back yesterday. Just what this election season needed, an extra hour. We are now one day away from having to wait another week to find out who won the election. It feels like the whole country is waiting to get the results of a biopsy. Almost 2 years ago, on November 15th, 2022, former President Donald Trump officially declared himself to be a candidate for president again. And now, 720 days, 88 criminal charges, 34 felony convictions, 4 indictments, 2 Democratic opponents, and 1 garbage truck later, here we are, Election Day. People keep asking me, what do you know? What are you hearing? I don't hear anything. I don't know anything. No one does. Not even the people who say they do. They don't know anything. These polls, they're mood rings. That's all they are. They bring you up. They bring you down. Poll is short for bipolar. I click one story. It says Harris is ahead in Iowa by 3 points. Next one says Trump's winning Iowa by 10 points, which is fine, by the way. Let him be president of Iowa. She can run the rest of the country. These polls, they're like, those women who claim they have the power to guess, to know what gender your baby is going to be. They're like, you're having a girl. I'm always right about this. And then you have a boy and they never bring it up again. They're like that. This is not a leap. There are only two choices. You have a 50% chance of being right. It's not like you picked the trifecta at the Belmont Stakes. There's no magic involved. It's heads or tails. At the end of this, the pollsters who are wrong will quietly disappear. The other ones will be like, I told you, 1%. What did you tell us? You called 800 losers who didn't have enough sense to not answer an unknown call. That's all you did. The results of the polls on Family Feud are more scientific than... Survey says Oprah, RFK Jr., Donald Trump, Kamala Harris. Nobody knows anything. That's right.
Nobody knows anything. Very, very funny. Jimmy Kimmel last night in his final monologue, and that's the comedy for you today here on Stand Up. Now it's time for my original content, the guests that I brought you. First, I'll start with a conversation with Jason Johnson. Then we go to Maura Quint. First, we'll start with Maura Quint, who is very honest about not knowing anything and pretty concerned, which I think is realistic and the point of view that a lot of people share. She, of course, is in Pennsylvania. Then Dr. Jason Johnson, political scientist at Morgan State University. And most importantly, of course, the analysis of my dad, Chizzle D, Chuck Dominick, 80 years old in upstate New York. I really liked his point of view. I thought it was interesting and original and hilarious, as well as at times frustrating because we don't always agree on things. But that is what I've got for you coming up. Let's start with Maura Quint. Of course, she is a campaign director at Americans for Tax Fairness. She is a very influential person on social media, first at Twitter and then at TikTok and Instagram and Blue Sky, where you can find her the most. Love her there and love her here. Let's do it right now with Pennsylvania's own, Harrisburg's own. It's Maura Quint. Okay, well, on my list of people that I absolutely had to talk to the day before the election and check in with and get a reality check from, it's Maura Quint, who, of course, is on that list. Hi.
Hi, what election?
There's a big...
Has everyone said that? Or is that the standard response?
Well, I wonder if there are Puerto Ricans in your state or Latinos in any state that weren't paying that much attention to politics.
Pete, let me tell you a story.
Yeah.
So yesterday I was driving and there's this new coffee, I don't know, it's like a little pop-up thing, whatever, but they sell coffee. It's like a coffee hut, I want to say. And it looked really cute, except that I was driving by in the last couple of months and it looked like there were really not Trump, but lots of right-wing kind of signs and paraphernalia around it. And so I was kind of hesitant to try it because I was I don't know, is this the affiliation with the coffee? It makes me a little nervous. I just kind of held back. And then yesterday I was driving by, this was after they had closed, and they had draped their whole coffee clutch with a giant Puerto Rican flag. And I was just all right, I'm going there tomorrow. That's what's going to happen. It was an interesting feeling.
I feel like we're seeing and hearing a lot of that kind of response and rhetoric. Could it be that the hate fest rally at Madison Square Garden, supposedly the closing argument for Trump and the campaign, did not go the way that they'd hoped it would?
Well, look, so I have to live in the world of pure pessimism because that is how I protect myself from the disappointments of the world. If I believe everything is going to be terrible, then, hey, I'm just right. And that feels good. That's a nice feeling.
That's why I called you.
Yeah. So let me start with obviously everything is going to be terrible. Of course. I mean, how could it be anything else? That said, oh my God, if it is a piece of shit, awful, worthless comedian that brings Trump, that just makes my heart feel so nice and warm and fluttery. I love it. I love it. That's fantastic.
This comedian could have had such an impact on the result of the election in important states. That makes you feel
it's
joy.
All comedians want, right? They want to be noticed and acknowledged and seen. And, he was seen. Good for him. Aw.
I would absolutely twist that if I were him to say, I knew what I was doing.
Oh, yeah, of course. Are you kidding?
And then be the hero of America forever.
He will not be because we're not going to let him back in. But, yeah. I mean, to our hearts. This was not me closing the border. Don't manipulate this audio. I know how you are.
You just ejected Tony Hinchcliffe from the country.
I think that if if our immigration policy was no comedians, I bet actually you could get a majority of Americans to be on board with that.
Ah, that's great. That's great. It's how far comedians have fallen, to me, is also wonderful. We used to be on this pedestal, and now it's about time that everybody saw what I saw the entire time I was a full-time comedian.
We're all terrible.
Garbage people. So speaking...
but proudly so. Anyway, go on. Yeah.
Well, it also seems that a weird narrative occurred. Are you seeing this? That the Tony Hinchcliffe makes those remarks about Puerto Rico, garbage island. Next day, Joe Biden, quote, gaffs when he says that they're garbage people. And the Trump campaign tries to make that a stunt and get in a garbage can. But all of those people who don't pay attention to politics day to day didn't see the part where Biden mentioned garbage. And it seems as if Trump and his supporters are doubling down on Latinos and Puerto Ricans being garbage. They're going to put them in this garbage truck and take them out of the country or something.
It is incredible to me how absurdly online this particular campaign is. And I mean, I'm very online. I get it.
Yeah.
But most people aren't. Like the Republicans that I know that they're trying to reach, in fact, the Democrats that I know for that matter, most of the people I know are not as wildly online. So the fact that they were trying to do that is so funny. And then this whole squirrel thing is like...
The fact that a squirrel was euthanized by the Department of Conservation, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, that the puppy killing, the puppy murder party is trying to be like, avenge the squirrel. They're trying to use that as their big sort of final send-off. And they have spent the whole campaign just being like, have you ever murdered puppies? I murdered puppy. I murdered a puppy the other day. It is so amazing.
That is a really funny observation. And in case people don't know, a guy in New York State had a pet squirrel and a pet raccoon, and you're not allowed to have that. And the Department of Conservation came over to check on it, and the squirrel bit the guy. The guy who works for the state. And then they euthanized that squirrel. And the guy went online and was like, I can't believe the state euthanized my squirrel. So maybe that's the hair splitting that you're missing. The nuance that you're missing is it's okay if I want to kill my dog, but it's not okay for the state to kill my potentially rabid squirrel.
This is some interesting body autonomy stuff we're getting into here.
Do you think, are you not surprised by the fact that there's tape of Jeffrey Epstein saying that he was best friends with Donald Trump for years, and that's not a bigger story? Did you know about that?
Here's the thing. I think anything that comes out that just confirms all of our priors, good or bad, doesn't make any blip. And everybody knew that. No one on the right or left is being like, what? I can't believe it. Everyone's just like, the crazy people on the right are either ignoring it or they're saying things like, oh, whatever the dude who released it is a liar, or it's manipulated audio, or Trump was just in there because he's, got a secret to bring down child trafficking, and so he was going to work it from the inside.
Is that one of
lies
them?
They've told themselves.
Oh, wow. You just did a good job recapping the lies they've told themselves. But, have you seen the Joe Biden is a pedophile, or Harris Walls Joe Biden is a pedophile, flags and signs?
I have seen, a couple.
It's just weird. They have this obsession with pedophilia, thinking that it's everywhere and everybody that they don't like. I've been labeled one, as you know. You literally killed Twitter. People calling me that for a couple days. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
But it's just weird because Trump was really good friends with, and definitely was into, and probably did terrible things to underage women. So in fact,
well, I think all the people who are really obsessed with that kind of stuff are so in their own head and conspiracy about it. They can convince themselves that black is white and white is black.
Yeah,
all the
I
time.
hear you. It's just
it's
just so telling on yourself in a way. Here's the sign: Harris Walls voters support pedophilia. Your candidate is a rapist who's assaulted dozens of women and apparently was best friends with the most famous or infamous pedophilia ever. Well, he's up there. There's a lot of them, unfortunately.
I know. I'm like, who are you talking about? Pick one. The whole party could go down.
The Catholic Church, Jerry Sandusky. Anyway, the point is, he's the candidate, and it's weird. All right, moving on to just overall, how you're feeling. Don't you think that we never needed to talk about this election? Because once they took women's reproductive rights, all of the women who live here and vote were going to be the deciders. That was always going to be how it ended.
I don't know how it's going to end. I really don't know how it's going to end. And
you have a feeling?
I have I have a terrible, terrifying feeling. But because look, I went out and I knocked doors in 2016. I was not a fan of Hillary Clinton, but obviously, crushing Trump was all that mattered. And this man came to the door when I was knocking doors, and this was the day before the election, that he hugged me and said, "We're going to win." And that freaked me out ever since. I'm that
You're conditioned.
Feeling,
yeah.
It's like, oh, knock on wood, throw salt. I don't know what you do. Burn some sage. I don't know what we're meant to do. An offering to
Just for the listener, Maura just did all three of those things. She literally had salt in her hand.
I'm just doing them repeatedly.
And
it's
sage.
Like a tick now. And then I went out yesterday and was knocking doors for Harris, which no one answered their doors, which fair enough at this point, because I get it. I went and knocked doors, came back to my house a mile and a half away to find multiple mailers of people having knocked my door. We're all.
Isn't that a good sign?
It's a nice sign, but it was so funny. The first door I knocked, knocked, and I just hear this woman from inside going, "I swear to God, if that's one more campaigner." And I just shouted a weak, "I'm sorry," from the porch. And she opened the door and she was so mad, and she's holding a baby and there's a toddler at her foot. And I totally understood why she was mad, and she had every right to be. And she just looked at me and she's like, "I'm voting for Harris. I'm voting in person. I'm voting straight Democratic ticket. I'm voting completely blue. Please leave me alone." And I was like, oh.
And you just looked at her and said, "Trick or treat?"
I was like, I so understand. Yeah, I threw some candy at her and then ran.
At her kids.
Yeah.
And then scurried out. And because you're you hurt your foot on the way to your car.
The fact that I haven't hurt my foot, what does that mean? I don't know.
It's a good sign. I'm saying it's a good
so superstitious in the last week and a half.
If I get a text from you,
sort of a sign, and I'm like, I don't know.
If I get a text
in
from
every
you,
god and no gods, I'm whatever you need me to be right now.
If I get a text from you tomorrow that says I just stepped on glass, we are absolutely screwed.
Is that a good sign or a bad sign?
I don't know, actually. I think it's a bad sign.
See? A bad sign? Okay. All right. Good to know. Well, so now, thank you. Maybe you can prognosticate more for me. My house is flooding. What does that mean?
That's a good sign.
It means blue wave. Oh, my God.
I think that's what we're going to see. I think that we're seeing an underestimation of Kamala Harris the way we did of Donald Trump in 2016 and other polls being wrong. And I think it's going to be a big blue wave, just like the flood currently in your house. Maybe I should let you go. Jeepers.
It's okay. There's an ark that's being built, but it's not done yet, so it's fine.
I love that you have an ark being built by other people there. Undocumented, I imagine.
It's all squirrels, actually. It's all squirrel labor.
All right, well, I like your reality punch here. This is perfect for this show, and so I'm going to wrap it there with your final words, feelings, thoughts, observations about anything. What did you think of Donald Trump mimicking oral sex on the microphone in his final week?
You're trying to wrap it up with think about Donald Trump mimicking oral sex on a microphone. Pete, that's the next. In fact, what you've just said to me is I need to go black myself out for a couple of days. Will you give me a call on Thursday, maybe?
By the way,
I don't know.
You aren't the only woman who I've watched this and I don't want to see that. It seems that's really upsetting a lot of people. To me, it's awesome. I loved it. I've watched it 1,000 times.
Why?
Because I think that he's humiliating himself, and I love to watch him fail, whether it's a stutter or a dumb thing that he's saying or doing or that orange vest. I enjoy watching him fail because it makes me think, not because I enjoy people suffering, I don't, including his, but it makes me think that people will see that and go, oh, yeah, this guy's a joke.
Hold on a second. I would love to see his suffering. Let me pull you back. You were all very, I don't want to see anyone suffer, including him. No, I would like to see him suffer. I think that would be really enjoyable.
Yeah.
But that's not what I'm seeing there. I'm just seeing the continuation of hateful bullying. Everyone's laughing in his favor. I don't know.
Yeah, they were.
He doesn't look humiliated.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think he's going to be tomorrow night. Yeah. You'll stop by our hangout, okay? You'll stop by, I hope. We'll all be
yeah,
we'll all be there.
I mean, I am trying to bury my head in the sand, but
all right, well,
sure.
If we can get you out,
Can I pop in and talk about something completely not election related?
Yes, that would be fun.
All right.
That would be really
then I'll
fun.
be there.
Okay, cool. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
All right, sounds good.
There you go. My conversation with Maura Quint. Go say hello to her on social media. Thank her for joining us, and hopefully we'll get her to stop by the hangout tonight. Now it's time to get to Dr. Jason Johnson. You see him on MSNBC, where he's a commentator and an anchor, often filling in for the likes of Ari Melber, Joy Reid, and more. And, of course, I know him from our days at CNN together, his regular appearances on the old show and now on the new show where we've become really good friends. Let's check in with Jason Johnson right now.
The pre-election night beard and hair, right? Like I haven't had to clean up for air yet. So I'm totally on I got the scruffy beard. This is what you do on Instagram. So you're getting raw, uncut, undistilled Jason Johnson before I got to clean up before I go on air.
It's weird because I was just going to say how good I think you look, but now I take it back.
Thank you.
You look terrible.
Thank you. I literally did wake up like this. This is
well, if you slept
completely not cleaned up.
If you slept in that autumn sweater.
That I did not. It is a very nice sweater, though. Shout out to my stylist, Ivania.
You have a stylist, and you have an Ari Melber The Beat mug. Look at you.
Yes.
Okay. Where will you be on election night? What will you be doing?
Looks like I'm going to be at Howard.
Okay. Wow. Cool. Do you know what you're going to? Well, we could talk about it later, and then I can plug it if you don't know exactly. But
so my understanding is I'll be at Howard on election night. That's where Harris is having an event, and I'll probably be on the stand with MSNBC. But everything is kind of up in the air because things are in different locations right now. But I believe that's where I'm going to be.
Okay.
And it should be an interesting night. I don't think Trump is going to declare himself the victor tomorrow night on Tuesday night, probably at 11 o'clock or midnight or whatever it is. I don't think Harris will because she actually is going to follow the rules. So, and I don't know that we'll know because I think some of the vote counts aren't going to be done until like Saturday. So,
what are you seeing? Any narratives, any moments from the campaign, from the public, from either campaign? What do you think we should be thinking about here on the day?
So 3 things. I talked about this on IG, but like literally this morning, wearing the same outfit. 3 things to pay attention to. 1, a lot of people are getting overly excited or overly upset or whatever it is about that Iowa poll, right? So the Iowa poll drops on Saturday and shows Harris beating Trump 47-44 in Iowa. I don't believe that. I don't believe that Kamala Harris is going to beat Donald Trump in Iowa. But I do think that poll speaks to some important demographic trend lines that we may be seeing across the Midwest, i.e. Harris doing very, very well with college-educated voters of all races, Harris doing very well with seniors, Harris doing very well with women. And the biggest one, that I have been really lowballing this and being very conservative, I've been saying I think Harris is going to get 5 to 8% of the Republican vote. But people who I've talked to in campaigns, their internals say she might be getting 10 to 12.
Wow.
And the Iowa poll had her getting 11% of the Republican vote in Iowa. Now, if Harris gets 5 to 8, that's going to be a difference maker. If she gets 10% of the Republican vote, this may not be a long night because that's a huge difference in a lot of different places.
Okay. You said 3 things. Is that it?
Oh, yeah. So that was the first thing. The first thing was just the Iowa poll and what I see in it. The second thing is early vote numbers. I keep telling people, don't get too excited about the early vote, positive or negative, because you don't know which part of the early vote is what we call election day cannibalizing. And so the key thing with an early vote is it's just that, right? It's just an early voter. It doesn't mean that person is a new voter. So if I get my paycheck on Tuesday instead of Friday, it's not more valuable. It's the same amount of money. If you voted on election day in 2020 and vote early in 2024, that's not a new voter. So all the Democrats who are like, look at our early vote numbers. It's like, All the Republicans are like, look at our early vote numbers. They're like, no, it depends on what happens on election day. Early vote doesn't really tell you anything except new voters. And I can say in Georgia, 380,000 people who did not vote in Georgia in 2020 voted early this time. That is significant because my guess is those are new voters to the state, and we don't know how they vote.
Oh, okay. Number 3?
And number 3, the main thing I tell people is this. You have to remember that what you're doing in your individual state is more important than anything you're watching on TV. Really basic stuff like if you're going to vote on election day, make sure you're registered, right? Go double check that. Go double check it for your friends. Go call people in other states one way or another. Don't stress yourself out and recognize that the more that you look up polling information on Instagram or Twitter or on TikTok, the algorithm recognizes your anxiety and is just going to send you more stuff to freak you out. You're better off watching cable news when you want to, They'll give you some analysis. That's not me plugging myself. I'm just telling you the truth. That's probably an easier way to go. And chill, because we're not going to know anything for 3 or 4 days. I think we've got trends. I have an overall opinion, which we'll get to, I'm sure, at some point in this conversation. But stressing yourself out and eating yourself to death and all those things is totally unnecessary. It's just, it's not the energy I got.
Are you so sure that we're not going to know anything for 3 or 4 days? Are you not leaving open the possibility of a landslide victory one way or the other? And I mean the way towards her, because I can't imagine it being towards him.
I think a landslide is unlikely. What I think could happen is this is a scenario, right? You have a scenario about Pennsylvania, because that's the big linchpin for everybody. Let's say Trump wins Pennsylvania, right? At 3 o'clock in the morning, they've counted up enough votes. They're like, look, even if we count mail-in votes and everything else like that, it's unlikely that Harris can win Pennsylvania. Okay, right? So Trump wins Pennsylvania 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. The catch is Arizona, Nevada, and North Carolina could take a very long time to count their votes. And Harris, if she wins any 2 of those 3, still potentially wins the White House, right? And so since it's going to take several days for them, even if we got a clear idea about Pennsylvania on Tuesday, we still won't know for 3 or 4 days. Now, if Harris wins Pennsylvania on Tuesday, then Trump's path is really narrow, and then he's going to scream and yell, and you're going to see acts of violence and possibly terrorism. Right. So I don't think we'll know Tuesday night, but we could know whose path is going to be harder by Wednesday morning.
Got it. You said, if you want my overall opinion, ask me. So here it is. That's me asking you.
Yeah, my overall opinion is this. I do a sort of round robin. I talk to Republicans I know. I talk to Democrats I know. I talk to organizers on the ground. The biggest takeaway I have right now is that all things being equal, you would rather be Harris 24 hours out than Trump. That's what I get. That's not a guarantee for her. That's not a guarantee she wins, or not a guarantee he loses or he wins, whatever. But looking at the numbers, the voting, the trends, and the statistics, you would rather be her than him right now. Donald Trump had a pretty bad closing week. And I'm not talking about the stuff that 24-hour cable news talks about. I mean, that Madison Square Garden thing was an absolute unforced error. And it has spread like wildfire amongst many, many Spanish-speaking communities.
Yeah.
I had a friend who was telling me, she's like, look, on Spanish TikTok, like everybody's talking about this.
Yeah, so that's the question. Sorry to jump in, but that's the one thing I wonder is, did it matter that he said Puerto Rico to people who are from any part of the diaspora of Latin American countries and cultures? Like, did they all hear this kind of the same thing?
So I cannot speak to a community that, one, I am not part of, 2, that I don't study specifically. So I am only operating off of what I have been told.
I'm seeing and hearing a lot of people that don't identify as Puerto Rican, but do identify as Latino or Hispanic going, that was about us. I'm seeing and hearing a lot of that. That doesn't mean
Yeah, well, I'm like you. When I have talked to people, they're like, yeah, this is bad. This is bad. Everybody's talking about it. They pick it up now.
Except for Dominicans who agree with Tony Hinchcliffe. But that's comedy.
Now, there's an element to me that's like, oh, that's what you needed to hear? I mean,
well, yeah, sure.
He's been saying this stuff for 8 years, but who am I to judge, what finally brings somebody over the line?
I'm thinking of the person who paid no attention to politics, but is Puerto Rican, proudly Puerto Rican, but does not care about politics because they're into other things or whatever. And they're like, wait, what did he say about Puerto Rico? Wait a second. I feel like there's a lot of those folks.
Yeah. And I would say, when you talk about a closing week argument, right? You piss off a lot of people in Madison Square Garden. It gets all sorts of national attention one way or another. And then as a demonstration, and I say this all the time, we're not just in information silos now. We're in information prisons.
Yeah.
Like what I see, what you see, we're just not, we really don't have a general idea about the public anymore. What does Trump do? Joe Biden says that anybody who agrees with that is garbage. The Republican media ecosphere wraps up to that. They're like, oh, so you're calling us garbage, Joe Biden? So then Donald Trump rides around in a garbage truck. And it's like, that was only a thing within Republican
Most of
Instagram,
America, specifically the people who were outraged by the Puerto Rican thing, did not hear what Joe Biden said. Dark Brandon strikes again. Well done, sir.
Yeah. So when Trump was driving around in a garbage truck, to the people who were offended by Madison Square, it looked like he was tripling down.
Yes.
Like, it was the worst thing. I was like, oh, my God. Like, that's what happens when you only listen to your own people. So I'm saying this to say it's very rare that we have something happens that we're like, no, I know this broke out. I know this got bigger than just 24-hour cable news. And so to have that, your closing line, something that is racist and offensive that you triple down on in the last week, you can't end the season worse.
I just got to ask you this one last question, which is, what do you say? I don't blame anybody for being so cynical and bitter. I mean, I try to argue with them and convince them to come back to the light or some kind of idea that they can be positive change if you get involved. But if people are cynical and disenfranchised, especially if they're older, especially if they're a member of a historically marginalized community, my question is, what do you say to specifically black folks, speak to that are disenfranchised, that think both parties are bad? I don't vote. I don't get involved. America has never been good to me, or whatever, outcome or summary, something similar to that. What do you say to disenfranchised black voters who say, yeah, I'm not voting. I'm not getting involved. I don't like any of these people.
I would say that there's probably something at the local level that should matter to you. And so even if you don't really think that the national matters, like, there's somebody on your school board that makes a difference. Like, if you want to make sure that your kid's lunch is halfway decent, you should probably pay attention to who's on the school board. If you've ever had a problem with a teacher and you're like, hey, this teacher's trying to fail my kid and I don't even know who to talk to, you should probably vote for your school board because they set up the rules on how to deal with teachers that are difficult. If you ever have any issues about your police, then you want to vote for your local sheriff. You want to vote for your local district attorney. If you have any concerns about what's your water bill like, what's your energy bill like? If it snows here, if we have thunderstorms here, how quickly does my street get cleaned up? That's what your city council does. So I always tell people, if you don't give a crap about the national election, so be it. I can spend an hour explaining that to you. Maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. It's a lifetime of you being convinced that you don't matter, and that's specifically targeted at people of color. But your local stuff does matter. Like, that does have an immediate impact. Pete, you know that. I know that. Shout out. She says, hi. I was talking to my mom this morning, and we were having this whole conversation about, like, local news and local reporting and local voting and the kind of work that she's done because she's been phone banking. So that's what I tell people. I'm like, there is something that happens to you at a local level where that matters, right? There was a shooting. I can tell you this. There's a shooting at a park near my house, a park that I walk in on a regular basis, right? 6 months prior to that, a local school teacher's body was found in this same park. I live in the burbs, dude. So when I see 2 killings in a park that I like to walk in over the last year, hell yeah, I paid attention. I'm like, who are my local cops around here? Who's my city council person, right? Like, that's me, Jason Johnson, who does, TV stuff, but I paid attention to that locally. I don't have kids or anything else like that because it's a local safety issue for me. So you can't feel disenfranchised about the stuff that affects you directly.
Great answer. Well, great answers. Thank you very much for talking to me today. And I will reach out to you tomorrow. Would love for you to stop in at our hangout, even if for 30 seconds while you're, some bigwig connected to an earpiece and all that. Just stop in with us. Stand up, listeners. Will be a whole bunch of us tomorrow night. Tonight. It's tonight when it's posting. Thank you, sir.
All right. Later, man.
All right. There he goes. The great Dr. Jason Johnson, Morgan State University. See him on MSNBC tomorrow. Hopefully he'll stop by the hangout as well. I'll be starting that at 7. Did I already say that? And now it's time to get to my dad. I told you he'd join us. He does not disappoint. I love this conversation. My dad does not identify as a liberal or as a Democrat, and you can hear that here. He's got issues, and you can sit there and listen to them and say the argument that you would make when you're listening to this conversation with my dad. But I wanted to just hear his thoughts and feelings about things. And the bottom line is there are a lot of people like him, his age, his category, that aren't necessarily really excited about voting for Kamala Harris or a Democrat or a liberal per se, but that are happy to do it to vote against Donald Trump. And it's not always that easy and complicated for everybody. And my brother and my mom have tried for years to argue with him about these few issues which he doesn't necessarily agree with us on, and he almost always comes around, to be honest with you, but we love him. I love when he joins us. He's not very politically correct. He doesn't want to be, but I think this conversation is perfectly representative of how a lot of folks feel, which is one of the great reasons to talk to him. Of course, we have some great moments and laughs in here. I hope you enjoy it. It's time for Chizzle D, my pop, right now. Oh, is there any way for you to stop moving, for Christ's sake?
I'm trying to line it up so I'm on the thing here.
You got to prop it up on something or something.
It is propped up, and
that's right perfect. Don't move. Don't do anything. Don't do anything. It's gonna get. Freeze. Don't touch it. Perfect. Okay. Are you ready? All right.
Yeah.
Welcome back to the show, Dad. You are on.
Well, it's really great to be back.
Yeah, I know you're super nervous to be talking to me here.
Well, I am. I'm a wreck.
So are you a wreck about the election? Are you nervous?
No. How's that for an answer?
How do you feel? Nope. What do you think? Do you think that Kamala will win, or do you think Trump will win?
What do I think? Who will win? I have no idea.
Well, yeah, but what do you think? Just give it a...
I'd like to think that America is not so stupid as to elect an idiot.
And who of the two do you think who you refer?
Oh, yeah. No, Trump.
Yeah.
I should have clarified that.
Let me just ask you a question. A real serious question. And be honest with me. A man of your age and category, whatever you want to call yourself, however you identify.
Category.
Well, how do you identify? What are your pronouns?
My pronouns? What the hell does that mean?
Like you're a man. You identify as a man. You identify.
Yeah. What the fuck else would I identify?
Do I identify it in any way ethnically?
Ethnically?
Like you're half your dad was Lebanese, your mom was Italian, but
ethnically that's what I would be. I mean, I'm not American Indian or Indian with a dot. I'm none of them. I'm not a Jew. What the hell do you think I am?
So given that,
I filled out a form the other day. They had 9 choices.
What did you fill out? What did you say you were?
I said I was non-disclosure. Oh. I just wrote it in.
So, but given the whatever you are, okay,
which is confusing right now.
Yeah. You look around and you see guys like you that you grew up with or around your age, whatever.
Yeah.
And most of them are voting for Trump. You have never, ever for 1 second been convinced by this man. You've always thought he was like a con artist, I think, forever. And you've always thought he was a dirtball. And you've always had a good judge of character if a guy's a dirtball. Yeah, I think you've always said that guy's a sleazebag about all kinds of types of guys. Like that guy used to fix the boat. What was his name? The guy who did the boat.
Pete?
You thought he was a guy. Did you? I thought you. What did you think of him? You kind of liked him. I thought you thought he was an honest guy, I guess.
You mean Pete? The guy?
Yeah, the boat guy.
That fixed their boat?
Yeah. He's always smoking cigarettes.
Yeah.
Fixing boats.
Yeah, he killed him.
Anyway, what did you think? You never liked Donald Trump, so why not?
Well, wait, go back to the guy who fixed the boat. What's he got to do with that?
Nothing. I don't know. I just thought you would. I was just thinking of somebody who you said things about, which is a long list. But just stick to Trump. What did you think of him from the start?
Well, I've never liked him.
Why?
But he's, he was. I read his pamphlet, "The Art of the Deal." I don't call it a book, because I read it in maybe 11 minutes. And the more I read of it, I go, well, this is pretty shallow. And then, so I didn't, and I hated him on television. Your mother wouldn't let me watch even 2 minutes of it. And I didn't care. You're fired.
On The Apprentice. Yeah.
Yeah, guy said.
You watched the episode I was on, I hope.
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
Yeah.
So do you think that because you were a salesman and you were, as far as I could tell, an honest broker, and you did not like getting ripped off in general, that you recognize that he was a dishonest salesman?
I think everybody recognized it.
No, but honestly, I think
that's the confusing part to me.
No, I think that the confusing part is that you are a minority of people in your demographic. Men your age with your background actually like the guy. I've always thought that the reason you didn't like the guy is because you're not a sleazebag with women, and you were a salesman and you could recognize someone who was a dishonest con artist.
I don't think it's that deep.
Okay.
To be honest with you. I mean, seriously, yeah. I don't think anybody liked him. I mean, he's not a likable guy.
But your friends, you have friends. You argue with your friends about the guy. Your friends,
No. You're missing the point. Before he ran for anything, okay, nobody took him seriously. He was not a well-liked man. That's part of the amazing part of the story, is that nobody liked him before, and now there's people who think he's the greatest thing since ice cream or something. I mean, that's the part I can't understand. I don't fathom it, because he's going to drain the swamp, whatever the hell that means. He's still going to drain the swamp, even though he was in charge of the swamp for 4 years.
Well, let me ask you this. The question that's most important, interesting to me, is, does character matter? And you've dealt with all types of politicians and leaders your whole life. Specifically like the mayor of Syracuse, New York or something.
Yeah.
So do you, and you think, and my impression is that my dad thinks character does matter, no matter what you're doing, whether you're fixing a boat, the principal of a school, a priest of a church, or, the mayor or president. So in this case, it seems like a lot of people are saying, I don't care about character. I just want this to happen or that to happen. What do you think about that question in general? Does character matter if you're going to be in a leadership role?
Okay, here's the answer to that one, in my opinion. Character definitely matters. Character is everything. And I think that the people who like Trump would say, of course, character matters. And they would say that he has good character, because that's what they would say.
Do you think
That's what they would say. I don't.
Do you think he has good character? What do you think of his character?
I don't think he's a character already. He's an asshole.
Yeah.
Can I use that word? Asshole? He's an asshole.
Yeah. We won't take that one from you. I promise.
Don't ever, because there's a lot of them out there. But he's
so
he has no moral character. I mean, he's a character, all right, but he has no moral character. None. Zero.
Right.
Zip. Right. Nada.
And to the people who are still supporting him at this point after everything we've seen, what do you think about them? Do you have any compassion for their point of view?
No. I've spoken to some of them, and I've stopped it if I know them. I'm going to see a guy this week who's a staunch supporter of Trump. We're not going to talk about politics. It's just not going to happen. There's no talking to them. It's just like, you know what, take it to the other side. Okay, this is where it gets really kind of interesting to me and muddy. People who back Kamala Harris feel the same way. There's no talking to them either. The staunch supporters of her. Okay, I think there's a lot of subjects to be spoken about there with her. And character is not a problem with her, but I believe that her beliefs, I don't believe in her beliefs, a lot of them.
But yet you voted for her. You voted
absolutely. For her. I mean, a vote against him, or a vote for her is a vote against him. You kill two birds with one stone when you vote. I think what's going to happen with the election, hopefully, is that a lot of people, I do know a lot of people say, I cannot vote for Trump. I've heard a lot of people say that. You know what they don't say? But I'm going to vote for Kamala Harris. No, that's not going to happen. They're just not going to vote for president.
But you already voted. You voted for her, and I mean, what? So why?
Because a vote for her is a vote against him.
Right. Do you think? How much do you think about? Because the big issue is women's reproductive rights, access to health care, access to abortion. Do you think about that?
Yeah, very much. I do. It was it Eric Siegel or Bill B? They were talking about women who are older than 65.
Yeah.
No, and remember.
Yeah.
And about abortion.
Yeah.
And those of us who were there knew the situation. We knew women who had abortions. We knew what they went through. And it was it's absolute insanity. It's absolute insanity, and how anybody can not see that. I understand how people can not see that, because they don't know how bad it is. Talk about a war within. It's just terrible.
You were raised Catholic. You went to Catholic high school. When did abortion When did you ever hear of it? When you were of age to have sex, did you know that was a?
Well, yeah.
I honestly don't. I don't honestly have no idea. I've never really.
Well, here's what we knew. Here's what we knew.
Yeah.
Young girls were sent away to have their babies because of the embarrassment. That was one thing.
That was a thing.
Yeah.
In your community, like you knew of people that did that.
Yeah,
like
I dated women like that. I knew that.
You got women pregnant and then they left you.
No, I knew women who had babies.
How many? No, let's clear this up. How many women did you get pregnant that got sent away? Do I have siblings?
All right, Pete. You've got 4 sisters.
Where are they?
You have 4 sisters.
I can't wait. Where did they get sent to?
Well, they all look like you and me. They're all bald.
They're bald.
I'm trying to keep track of them.
Oh wow! I didn't know that. I didn't know that was a thing that you were familiar with at that time.
Oh, Pete, everybody was.
I didn't know that.
No, I mean it's like everybody knew girls, literally girls who had kids. This wasn't uncommon, and and we also knew girls who had abortions.
You did. You actually knew of women who had abortions. Okay.
Yeah, and. Well, I had a girl describe it to me once. I never forgot that conversation. She just felt like she had to tell me about it. I had nothing to do with it. I wasn't involved, okay? But she told me about it. And it was the whole thing. She told me the whole thing she went through, and it was just like a horror show.
I mean, do you know about what age you were when that happened?
Yeah, I was early 20s, late teens, whatever,
So it was the 30s, around the Great Depression.
No, it was the 19th and 20s. I was 1920s.
Wow, I didn't know that. That's crazy, Dad. That's
and it wasn't me. I mean, everybody. It was a very, very common thing, and there were, like I say, I dated girls that had kids and they gave them away.
But
yeah,
wait, did you just say you had dated women who had kids that gave them away?
Yeah.
Wow.
Women, not one. It wasn't.
You dated more than one woman who had given birth to a child and gave it away.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did you date a lot of women before you met Mom? And then how many did you date after you met Mom?
After I met your mom, I never dated another woman.
He thought about it. He thought about doing the bit, but he decided to punch out.
Yeah. She told me, "Don't." And
she said no. She wasn't into that. Yeah.
No, there's certain things you're not going to do. And that was part of the list.
Was on the list. Mom said she had to get a checking account, like your permission or something like that. Like that's how it was. For real. That was the law. I think she told me.
No, I told her that was the law. That wasn't the law.
It was. It was the law. It was the law.
No.
She told me. Go get her.
No, not to get a checking account.
All right, let me switch subjects because I want to get to a couple other things with you. Which is one of the other things that's really always been something that's animated you, something that's bothered you, something that you've cared about is war. You lived through the Vietnam War. You lost your cousin in the Vietnam War. You served in the reserves. As a result, you didn't
honorably for 6 years.
Well, honorably is questionable. But the point is, you hated that war is the shortest way to say it.
Everybody did.
And you hated the Iraq War.
Yeah.
And thought that your generation should have known better. Because the guys that made those decisions are around your age, Rumsfeld and Bush and Cheney, et cetera. Even in Colin Powell, you were disgusted by their decision and that war. And how do you feel now about that issue and the difference in this election? Because I feel like that's one of the other reasons you don't like Donald Trump and others who.
Well, Donald Trump, I'm gray on that area with him because the fact of the matter is he didn't start any wars while he was in office. He kind of modified Afghanistan, and I don't know if he seems to be against war. I mean, when all the rhetoric goes away, it seems like he's just against it. It doesn't serve any purpose to him personally, so he doesn't like it. I'm really torn on that about who.
I can help you with that. I had this discussion with my brother. He says this kind of the same. He said the exact same thing you did, and I was like,
yeah.
Now the thing I don't understand when people say that is, he didn't have any wars. He did make really good friends with our enemies.
Yeah.
And that's and people sometimes people are lazy in their thinking and think, well, that's a good thing to be friends with your enemies. Nope.
No, I
can see
well,
why
you
someone
asked
might.
me how I feel about war, and I'm torn as to who would be the better president to avoid that situation. We kind of know where he's coming from in that because he was the president, and he said and did some crazy things.
Yeah.
And I really think that he scared the shit out of Iran and China. I really do, and North Korea.
Because he was crazy.
Yeah, because he was crazy and totally unpredictable. And as far as Kamala Harris goes, we have absolutely zero idea of what she would do as far as war goes.
Don't you think she's a smart enough politician to do the thing that would be in her best political interests, and no war for no president would be in the best political interest? Like, how do you get the public behind any massive war? I don't think you do. I think the only way that the American public would get behind a war and support a Republican or a Democrat is if we were attacked the way we were on 9/11. And then, even then, I think we would have a robust
Well, I don't
debate.
know. We went to Iraq with no problem.
After 9/11, that was as a result of 9/11, though.
Yeah, that wasn't a result of 9/11. We had no
Yes.
business going to Iraq.
No,
We went
but
to
that
Iraq.
was how it was sold. That was how it was sold.
But anybody who looked into it said, well, what are we going to Iraq for? They didn't have anything to do with it.
You are arguing from a sane, realistic point of view.
Well, but my point is that all you had to do was look into it, and you would have said we shouldn't go to war. But people were willing to go to war without even researching it.
Yeah.
And
I don't think that happens.
War, I'm sorry, but you forget your political interests and everything else, and start taking some responsibility of, hey, maybe I should be writing to my congressman and doing something about this. Because if 80% of America said we shouldn't be going to war, instead of 80% saying, yeah, we should go to war, let's go bomb the shit out of somebody. No, we'll go to war again. We don't give a shit.
As much as you love your granddaughters more than any grandfather could ever love his granddaughters, how much do you think about their future in the country that they inherit when you think about politics and government, etc.?
It's pretty scary because I haven't seen any massive movements for the betterment of the world on the part of our government. You can take the most liberal. They're all out there for our good and everything. And basically, what do we hear? We're going to lower your taxes. But wait a minute. Why don't you say we're going to take your taxes and spend them on the future of our water and our air? Why aren't we saying that? No, that's not a big subject. So yeah, I'm worried about it. Yes.
Well, the Democrats made the largest investment into water and air that any politician ever has ever.
I haven't heard a whole lot of talk about that from our vice president.
She doesn't campaign on that because people doesn't resonate. It doesn't.
Because the question was, how do I feel about the future of my granddaughters? And that's a problem. And I'm not a tree hugger.
Why not?
I mean, I see where they went. I don't know.
Why am I such a tree hugger if you're not? I'm your son.
Well, I'll go hug a tree, but they want to put up $100 billion plant in Syracuse, and they're worried about some owl in the tree.
Oh, you don't like that? You think they should kill that owl? Should not be in the way of building a plant.
I'm saying that there's certain things we should be doing, okay, and keeping the air and the water clean is important.
But that owl not
and carrying
not so
it carrying it to the nth degree because the extreme liberals are worried about a fish or something. But we got to we have to get things done. We're not good at that.
Is it that you don't care about wildlife?
I care about wildlife, but it goes just so far.
Owls?
I've never seen an owl. Who the hell sees an owl?
Really?
I never saw an owl in the wild.
I don't think I've seen an owl. I don't think I've seen an owl in the wild too. You're 80-something and you've never seen an owl.
No, they're probably living in our backyard, literally.
All right, final question. If there's a species of animal that you're most worried about, what is it? That you would be most upset if it were to go extinct? What would it be?
Really?
Yeah, seriously.
That's a pretty simple question. Man.
And that's where we'll end it. That's where it ends with my dad. But how about it? That is it. I love that. That was great. I hope you liked it. I hope you liked all of it. Those of you that listened all the way to the end, you are the greatest. And I am so thankful and grateful to you. I think about you all the time as I am trying very hard to get this show up and out by midnight or by 6 a.m. at the latest. I didn't make it today. And I did get it up by 7 a.m. though, so how's that? That's it. That's all I've got for you. I hope to see you at tonight's hangout starting around 7 p.m. Later, if I need be, or if anything happens earlier, the same. If anything happens, look for that email, patreon.com/Pete Dominic. Join us tonight. I love you guys. I'll see you later. Bye-bye. John Carroll taking us out as he does every day.
Keep right on ignoring us if we keep sitting tight. You got to open up the window to let in some light. You got to stand up. That's right. You got to rise up. You got to stand up. You got to stare the devil straight in the eye. We got to let him know it's his turn to go. See it clear when all you hear is a lie. Don't get up off of your butt, get down off of your fence. Even if it ain't a very friendly audience, well, they'll begin to listen when you start making sense and you stand up, stand up. No need to point your rifle to defend your town, just stand up, stand up. You know they can't deny you what you're laying down. Boy, you better stand up, stand up. Show your face of every color, yellow, black, red, and brown. She's the place where every lost child will finally be found. There's only one thing to do before we stand our ground, and that's stand up, stand up. Well, the founding fathers saw a land for all. They had to stand up, they had to stand up. They had a keen imagination for a crystal ball, drawing all the plans of stand up. But all they had to go on was the time they were in, with other causes for laws, and since they weren't in sin, they knew that change was gonna come before the change could begin. They had to stand up. All right, they had to stand up. We got to stand up. We got to look the devil square in the eye. We gotta let him know it's his time to go and make it clear when all we hear is a lie. Why you lying awake wondering where the money all went? It'll be the cost of freedom that'll go unspent. You can see him flee the scene of that experiment if you stand up. Alright, we got to speak up, we got to reach up and raise your voice in every way you know how. Don't be toes up, you got to show up. Ain't no better time to do it but now. No need to pledge allegiance to no wanton tribe. Rise up, show obedience to the voice inside, and listen well and it'll tell you not to run and hide. It says stand up.